This is the story of MH370. Now, I have done a video on MH370 which talks about what we'd do if we ever found the wreck of MH370. If you want to watch that video, it'll be on screen right about now. But today I want to talk to you about some new information that recently came out about MH370 that sheds some new light on the case. And it's frankly quite scary to think about. Now, I want to preface this video by saying that this video is not based on a government report like my other videos are. But this video is based on a report put out by two researchers, Richard Godfrey and Blaine Gibson. Now, you might be wondering why we should listen to two seemingly random people on MH370. Well, for one, these people have studied the crash more than pretty much anyone else on the planet and are considered to be the foremost experts on the crash. You know a bunch of those wreck pieces that have been found of MH370? Well, a lot of that was found by Blaine Gibson. He's interviewed tons of locals in Madagascar, and his interest in MH370 borders on an obsession. Richard Godfrey, on the other hand, is a British computer scientist, and he's worked on the avionics of everything from the 747 to the F-16 to the Tornado. He has also written numerous papers on the flight models and drift models that helped Blaine Gibson find pieces of the wreck in the first place. If anyone knows what they're talking about when it comes to MH370, it's these guys. But don't take my word for it. This is what the Australian Transportation Safety Board had to say about Richard Godfrey. Quote, "The ATSB is aware of the work Mr. Richard Godfrey and acknowledges that he is a credible expert on the subject of MH370. But the ATSB does not have the technical expertise and has not been requested to review his MH370 flight path paper and workings. As such, the ATSB cannot offer an assessment to the validity of Mr. Godfrey's work using WSPR data." End quote. So I think it's worthwhile looking into what these two people have to say on the disappearance of MH370. Here's a refresher for those of you that have no idea what the story of MH370 is about. MH370 is a Malaysian Airlines Boeing 777 that was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on the 8th of March 2014. The flight was normal. It took off, turned north, and then 40 minutes into the flight, the plane suddenly vanished off of radar. Immediately after the plane went missing, a massive multinational search started for the plane in the South China Sea and the Andaman Sea. But unknown to everyone at the time, as the search was being carried out, the plane was still airborne, heading south, deeper and deeper into the heart of the Indian Ocean. We know this because the plane kept pinging an inmarsat satellite hours after it was thought to have crashed. These handshakes continued for a few hours, and after that, they too stopped. Studying the signals that were sent from the plane to the satellite, we were able to deduce that the plane flew south towards the Indian Ocean and away from its intended destination of Beijing. In the years since the plane went missing, tiny pieces of debris started to wash up on the shores of islands in the Indian Ocean. A few pieces of the wreck washed ashore in the French island of Réunion, and quite a few pieces washed ashore on the island of Madagascar. This is where the report by Richard Godfrey and Gibson Blaine start. In 2017, Tropical Storm Fernando formed near the island of Madagascar. The strong waves and winds of the storm washed this tiny little metallic-looking object onto the beaches of Antsiraca. This tiny little thing was found by the wife of a fisherman in Madagascar, and for the next few years, this bit of metal was used as a washing board. Then on the 17th of November 2022, Blaine Gibson stopped at the home of the fisherman named Tatley, and he spotted the white object among the other things that have washed up on the beach. 19 items from MH370 had been found in Madagascar, and this part seemed to fit the bill quite well. This is exactly where drift models said that parts of MH370 would wash up if the plane did go down in the Indian Ocean. The debris was white on one side and black on the other, and was slightly curved with a honeycomb structure inside it. Now this begs the question, what is this? Comparing this piece to other pieces of debris that we know to be from MH370, there are a lot of similarities right off the bat. For example, a nose landing gear door that was found on the very same beach that this piece was found had the exact same construction and looked very similar. Both pieces showed very similar damage. We see the same compression and puncture damage on both pieces of debris. The piece of debris, as one would expect, is quite beat up and damaged, but it had very interesting bits of damage that one would not expect to be inflicted on something like this from being in the sea for years and years. There were these parallel slits in the debris. Something had punctured through this piece of debris. The largest slit was 4 inches long and very narrow. Now, we need to know where this piece came from on the aircraft. Composite structures are used all over the Boeing 777, from control surfaces to wing-to-body fairing and landing gear doors. The markings on the washed-up piece give us a few clues as to what it is. This piece shows that a single base plate was attached to it. It shows that there was a hinge or a latch of some sort attached to it at one end. It also shows slicing damage from the engine, so it would have had to be close to the engines. We'll circle back to that later. Only one component fits all of these criteria, the main landing gear trunnion door. Now, on the 777, there are 2 landing gear doors. We have the big main landing gear doors that we're all familiar with, and then there's the smaller door called a trunnion door. It is situated right above the main landing gear doors. When the gear is extended, both doors open downward and are at a right angle to the body of the airplane. Now, remember how I told you that we'd get back to the slicing damage from the engines? Well, they tried to think of how the trunnion door could sustain damage like this. Most of the damage could be explained away by the extremely high impact forces and being in the sea for a few years, but not the slits. Something sliced through those doors at high speed. There's only one culprit, the engine of the 777 disintegrating on impact. It is possible that the engine compressor ring disintegrated as the engine impacted the water, and pieces of the ring were sent flying out from the engine, which then impinged on the trunnion door. The fan blades at the front of the engine are way too big to cause this kind of damage, but the compressor blades deeper in the engine would create slits of this exact size that we see in the trunnion door. But this brings up an uncomfortable scenario for the demise of MH370. Most of the damage on the trunnion door was from the inside to the outside. Now in cruise, and in most other phases of flight, the trunnion door is flush with the underbelly of the airplane. But only when it is extended can there be damage on the trunnion door like the kind that we see. That means that the landing gear was most likely extended when MH370 hit the water. Here's a quote from the report. Whatever is the cause of the slicing damage, the fact that the damage was from the interior side to the exterior side of the debris item leads to the conclusion that the landing gear was highly likely to be extended on impact, which in turn supports the conclusion that there was an active pilot until the end of the flight. That last sentence, right there. Someone was at the controls of MH370 till the end. If you're having a water ditching, then extending the gear is the last thing that you do. I mean, look at the A320 that ditched in the Hudson, or Ethiopian 961 that had to ditch in the water off the coast of Comoros. Both had their gears up. Keeping the gear up reduces impact forces on the plane, and it helps the plane float for longer. We also know that the gear had to be extended towards the end of the flight, as extending the gear earlier on in the flight would have meant that the plane would not have had the range needed to get this far south into the Indian Ocean, as keeping the gear down would generate so much drag that would significantly cut down the range of the 777. From another piece that was recovered from MH370, the flaperon, we know that the flaps were not extended for the water landing. This meant that someone in the cockpit failed to extend the flaps and extend the gear instead, when it was clear that the plane would be landing in the water. From a rational point of view, that makes no sense. I looked through past incidents of the 777s to see if there had been a case where the gear was automatically extended without pilot intervention, but there was none of that. There were instances where the gear was extended and then was stuck like that, but no instances where it came down of its own accord. What do you think of all of this? Do you think that someone from the cockpit did all of this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode of Mini Air Crash Investigation. If you like the videos that I make, do consider liking and subscribing. It will really help the channel grow. I will catch you guys next time. Stay safe.